The emergency klaxons wailed through the corridors of Nexus Academy, their piercing shriek sending students and faculty into immediate lockdown protocols. Director Kexitharian's four arms moved frantically across the control panel, his chitinous fingers clicking against the bioresponsive surface as he activated the containment fields. "How did it escape?" he demanded, his translator struggling to convey the panic in his native Zilithian clicks and whistles. Professor Yilmoth, the Academy's security chief, stood rigid beside him, her crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the emergency, lighting in fractured rainbows. The Vorac somehow overrode the neural dampeners during the feeding cycle. It's loose in Section C. Kexitharian's compound eyes fixed on the security monitors, watching as the massive predator stalked through the Academy's halls. The Vorac stood nearly 3 meters tall, its muscular frame covered in midnight black scales that seemed to absorb light. 6 powerful limbs ended in razor-sharp claws, and its elongated skull housed rows of serrated teeth designed for tearing through the toughest alien hides. "Evacuate Section C immediately," he ordered. "Seal all blast doors and—" "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Tresvilla, her tentacles quivering with distress. "Section C houses the nursery ward. There are 37 cubs from 12 different species currently in care there." The director's blood ran cold. The nursery ward was where young aliens stayed while their parents attended advanced courses at the Academy. It was supposed to be the safest place in the entire facility. "Get me a direct line to the nursery supervisor," Kexitharian commanded. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the terrified face of Mira Chen, the human caretaker who had been assigned to the nursery just 6 months ago. Her dark hair was pulled back in its usual ponytail, but strands had escaped, framing her pale, determined face. "Director," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos visible behind her. "The cubs are secure, but the Vorac is approaching our sector. I've activated all the internal barriers, but they won't hold for long." "Ms. Chen, you need to evacuate immediately," Kexitharian said. "Leave the cubs and get to the emergency." "Pods." The human's expression hardened. "I'm not abandoning them." "You don't understand," Professor Yilmoth interjected. "Voracs are apex predators from the Sigma Draconis system. They're genetically programmed to hunt. Their bite can crush durasteel, and their claws can slice through reinforced barriers. You're just a human. You have no natural defenses against something like this." Mira's jaw set firmly. "These cubs trust me. I won't leave them." The security feed showed the Vorac approaching the nursery's outer door. Its massive claws scraped against the metal, leaving deep gouges as it tested the barrier's strength. The emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across its predatory form, making it appear even more terrifying. Behind Mira, the cubs huddled together, small Zilithian younglings with their soft, undeveloped chitin, fuzzy Altarian pups whose bioluminescent spots flickered with fear, tiny vegan sprouts whose crystalline formations were still translucent with youth. They looked to the human with complete trust, their various forms of communication, clicks, chirps, and harmonic vibrations creating a chorus of fear that somehow she seemed to understand. "It's okay, little ones," Mira said softly, turning away from the screen. "Stay close to me." The outer door buckled under the Vorthic's assault. Sparks flew as the metal began to tear. The inner barrier was all that stood between the predator and the nursery. Kexitharian watched in horror as Mira did something unexpected. Instead of cowering or attempting to flee, she positioned herself directly between the cubs and the approaching threat. Her small human frame looked impossibly fragile compared to the monster she faced. The inner barrier gave way with a screech of tortured metal. The Vorac stepped into the nursery, its massive form filling the doorway. Its 6 eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, scanned the room with predatory intelligence. Saliva dripped from its jaws as it detected the scent of young prey. But then something extraordinary happened. The creature's advance stopped abruptly, its massive head tilted, confusion replacing hunger in its alien features. The Vorac took one step forward, then another, its movements becoming uncertain. On the security feed, Kexitharian and his staff watched in stunned silence as the cubs began to emerge from behind Mira. Rather than fleeing, they pressed closer to the human, their small forms clustering around her legs and arms. The Altarian pup's bioluminescence began to pulse in slow, rhythmic patterns. The Zilithian youngling's chittering took on a different tone, not fear but something else entirely. The Vorthak's predatory stance shifted, its claws retracted. The creature lowered itself until it was nearly at eye level with the cubs and made a sound that the Academy's computers had never recorded from its species before, a low harmonic rumble that vibrated through the station's hull. "By the 7 moons," whispered Professor Yilmoth. "It thinks they're its young." The realization struck them all simultaneously. The cubs, in their terror, had instinctively sought protection from the strongest figure in the room, the human who had cared for them with patience and gentleness. And somehow, through a combination of pheromones, behavioral cues, and perhaps something beyond scientific understanding, they had convinced the Vorthak that they belonged to her, that she was their mother, and in the predator's mind, that made her one of them. Mira, perhaps sensing the change in the creature's demeanor, slowly extended her hand. The Vorthak's massive head approached, and for a moment its scaled snout brushed against her palm with surprising gentleness. "Security teams, stand down," Kextharian ordered quietly. "Do not approach the nursery." For the next hour, they watched, as the most feared predator in known space lay down beside the cubs. Its massive form curled protectively around the small beings who had accepted a human as their guardian. Mira sat among them, one hand resting on the Vorthak's flank, the other gently stroking the various alien younglings who had found safety in the most unlikely pack. When the xenobiology team finally arrived with the proper neural dampeners and containment protocols, they found the Vorthak surprisingly docile. It allowed itself to be led back to its enclosure without resistance, but not before turning back once to look at Mira and the cubs she protected. Later, as Kextharian reviewed the incident reports, he found himself staring at a single line of data that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. Species designation, human. Classification, apex pack bond species. Threat level when protecting young, unmeasurable. In the nursery, Mira continued her work, surrounded by cubs from a dozen different worlds who had learned that sometimes the fiercest protector comes in the most unexpected form.